Madam Ambassador, distinguished guests, thank you for joining us today, and thanks to the organisers for the invitation to participate in the forum. I'm in just the next few minutes going to talk about our view of how energy demand is going to grow in Southeast Europe and Europe as a whole. I'm going to focus on natural gas, partly in the interest of time, but also to build upon the panel that we all just participated and listened to. So let me start by talking a little bit about how we see the evolution of natural gas demand in Europe. The chart to the left of this slide shows our view of natural gas supply and demand across all of Europe. Let me just briefly explain the chart. It runs from 2000 to 2040. It's taken from our published Energy Outlook. So it's actual data from 2000 to today, and then our projection out to 2040. And the top of the colors there, the top of the orange section is the total demand for natural gas in Europe. You can see it's quite spiky up to today. That's actual data. And you'll see that from today, where we're already seeing the last couple of years growth in natural gas demand in Europe, we see that increasing and continuing out to the mid to late 2020s and then sort of leveling off out to 2040. And that projection is very similar to those published by organizations, including, for example, the International Energy Agency. The various colors beneath there are representative of where natural gas comes from in Europe. The key headline, although demand in Europe is growing for natural gas, demand in southeastern Europe, including Greece, as we just heard, is growing for natural gas. Production of natural gas inside Europe is falling, and it's falling rapidly. That's the red colors you see there. Natural gas has been falling for many years. Today, Europe already imports more than half of its natural gas, and so with demand growing and local supply falling, that just leads to an ever-increasing call for imports. Most imports of natural gas today in Europe, as I'm sure this group knows, comes through pipelines. Pipelines from Russia, from Norway, from North Africa, very shortly to be joined by the TAP pipeline, which will run very close to here, already constructed in this part of the project, making this part of southeastern Europe an important new source of pipeline gas transit into the European market. We don't feel that pipeline gas can meet the full import requirements of Europe. Hence, we see a growing call on liquefied natural gas imports, and that's the strong growth you can see there in liquefied natural gas imports across the 20 or so terminals already in existence in Europe, with more being planned, as we've already heard, including some in this area. Why is natural gas demand growing in Europe? Two words: power generation. Power generation is the biggest single call on energy globally, and it's the same in Europe. And it's growing rapidly. Same time frame here, 2000 to 2040. The chart on the right there shows how power is actually generated here in Europe. And if I start from the bottom, you can see that the use of coal, although still relatively significant in some countries, has been falling for many years, and we think that will continue to fall out through the future. Conversely, in the red color, we see increased demand on natural gas for power generation. We're seeing that. That's real data, and we project that out at least until the mid-2020s. Nuclear power generation in Europe, which is shown in the dark blue color, is actually falling at the moment as several large producers shut in some or all of their nuclear power. So the amount of nuclear generation is actually falling. That'll be reversed a little bit in the mid to late 2020s when some big new projects come on stream, for example, in the UK. You'll see in the light green color rapid growth in wind and solar renewables. Finally, at the top in the light blue, labeled other renewables, that's hydropower, which is essentially at maximum capacity here in Europe in terms of the potential to build more. Europe, the whole world, is facing what we refer to as the dual energy challenge, the need to generate ever-increasing supplies of energy to power growing economies, growing populations, but at the same time have a reduced impact on the environment, including things like CO2 emissions. And we feel that natural gas has a very strong role to play in meeting that dual energy challenge. When used in power gen, natural gas emits less than half the CO2 emissions that coal does, a fraction of the nitrous and sulfur oxides that coal does, and of course none of the particulates that can be linked with health problems in parts of the world. Natural gas is also a proven and very reliable partner to intermittent wind and solar renewable power as well. And there's no country that has demonstrated this advantage more than the United States, where over the last 15 years there's been significant switching from coal-fired power to gas-fired power, which has driven a significant reduction in power gen CO2 emissions in the USA. Those have totaled over 500 million tons of CO2 avoided in the past 15 years. CO2 emissions from power gen in the US have been falling by about 1.5% per year, even as the economy continues to grow and the amount of power being generated continues to grow. And if we just compare that with Europe's biggest economy, Germany, that's cutting its power gen CO2 emissions by about 1/3 the pace of the US. Germany has a lot of renewable power, but also uses a lot of coal and lignite. For an explorer like myself, this means that Europe, including, of course, Southeast Europe, is an attractive place to look for new sources of hydrocarbons, including natural gas. So let me close my brief opening remarks here with just a quick comment on what we're doing here in Southeast Europe. If we look at a map of Europe showing the oil and gas fields, ExxonMobil interest acreage is shown in yellow, our eyes are naturally drawn to the northwest, to the various North Sea basins, the basins offshore Norway, the west of Shetlands, what we call the southern North Sea basin and its onshore extension into the Netherlands and Germany. That's where most oil and gas production comes from in Europe today. But it didn't start there. The first oil and gas production here in Europe, indeed the world, started only about 200 kilometers north of here in the Carpathian region of Romania, shortly followed by the Pannonian Basin in Hungary. I sometimes have to remind my American colleagues of that fact. Pennsylvania just a couple of years after that. And despite that longevity, we feel there's still plenty of potential to find new sources of hydrocarbons, including natural gas, here in southeastern Europe. And let me close with just highlighting 3 specific projects we're involved in. First of all, offshore Romania. We operate a block called Neptune Deep there with our partner, OMV Petrom. We drilled the Domino gas discovery there in deep water back in 2012, the first deep water gas discovery ever made in the Black Sea, and one of only a handful of deep water wells that have ever been drilled anywhere in the Black Sea. It's a very underexplored basin, very close to here. We followed that discovery up in a drilling campaign going from 2014 to 2016, 7 additional wells, found additional supplies of gas there, made some additional discoveries, and are currently hoping to progress a development of this that would bring new sources of gas into Romania and then potentially on into the rest of southeastern Europe. Southeast of here, offshore Cyprus, in 2017 we signed a production sharing contract with the Cypriot government for a block there called Block 10. It's the triangular block there, right up against the Egyptian border. And we're currently planning a 2-well exploration campaign there starting later this year, which will be the first wells we've drilled on that piece of acreage. And finally, last but by no means least, offshore southwestern Greece and Crete. We are in a consortium along with Hellenic and Total, who are the operator, that recently won a tender for the 2 large pieces of acreage shown there called West Crete and the Southwest Crete blocks. Those blocks are currently going through the formal government approval processes. We very much hope they'll be concluded in the coming months so we can start exploring an area which has never seen a single exploration well drilled. Again, we're always looking for more opportunities as well, and we're confident that this region has those opportunities. As we've been hearing, they certainly have the demand to connect to those opportunities. Thanks for your attention. I look forward to any questions that you may have.